1. Now, I explained to you how mind control gangs appeared in Iraq. Of course, this is one of the most important circumstances in which these gangs appeared, as I told you earlier that it is an intelligence network that was affiliated with the former regime and it only hidden itself and did not end and remained in ambush to come back again. Here I want to mention to you something important about Iraq is that the issue of liberating Iraq was not a war on Iraq or, according to the so-called wrongly, that it is an occupation, and it is a completely wrong word. Rather, the whole issue was that the previous regime violated all international laws and invaded Kuwait and wanted to occupy the rest of the Gulf states and others, and this regime rejected all international decisions and thousands of peaceful mediation and initiatives did not help with him in withdrawing from the state of Kuwait. On the contrary, he attacked other countries and this was the reason for the issuance of an international decision against the former regime as well. The world suffers from everything, and this people was not able to open its mouth with the regime to tell it this is a mistake. This is why there were no other options before the international community except for the liberation of Iraq here, because notice the goal, the coalition countries liberated Iraq, and after this, with an effort that is not required at all from them, they reconstructed Iraq, although this is not required of them at all because the regime committed legal violations, but only from a humanitarian side. He made Iraq as a model and the people wrote a constitution and voted on it, and there is a paragraph in this constitution that says or stipulates the freedom to establish non-governmental organizations, and this is the subject that I want to focus on because it is the weak point in which it was implemented.
في المملكة الجنرال شوارزكوف قائد القوات الأمريكية وصل في 26.
For the sake of our principles, for the sake of the Kuwaiti people, we stood our ground because the world would not look the other way. Ambassador El Saba, tonight, Kuwait is free. Where is it? We're very happy about that.
Or the gang exploited them anyway. If the coalition countries remained, everything would be good, but what happened was the departure of these forces from Iraq. Of course, the terrorist network had elements that it planted everywhere in order to give it information about whether the international forces would remain or not. An example was the homosexual security agent who later became one of the leaders of this gang and represents the younger class of the youth and one of the sources of this gang. This works in the police and he formed an illegal organization in which members of the police were registered and he chose them from among the police and security personnel whose duty is to protect the entrance to the gates of the military units in Iraq, in which the bases of the coalition countries were also present, and the duty of this organization was to collect all information about the international forces and every movement thereof, and after this the terrorist intelligence network obtained information that those forces would not remain in Iraq as well. Its elements were deployed everywhere and it began carrying out terrorist operations against the international forces and started spreading lies against them and inciting the people against them, and after the international forces left, they managed this terror network prevented from penetrating almost everything. Of course, one of the most important masks that were used were civil society organizations, which were a very big weakness. This gang exploited them. Of course, there are few people in Iraq who know what civil society is or have knowledge about NGOs. I mean, what is its work and what are the laws of affiliation therein and other paragraphs. Note that the coalition countries have also developed this aspect as well. 3. In Iraq, on laws and human rights, and how to be recognized organizations capable of working, but what happened is that this terrorist intelligence network exploited the great ignorance of this aspect as well. It is waging a war against good organizations that work with well-known law, and then the gang made itself organized, but with completely different laws. Regarding the official organizations of those that learned these laws from international organizations, and this is wrong. This is why the members of this gang that made themselves an organization did not have a specific name. Rather, it wears a different name, but it differs from one region to another. Rural people say that they are a tribal organization, and those in the city say that they are a mass organization or an organization affiliated with the United Nations, International, or Human Rights, etc. from false names. Of course, the person who has knowledge of organizations will know that they are not organizations at all through their laws that have no legitimacy, and the laws gangs only also have the goals of these completely different. They know anything, for example, in politics or security and religion and drugs, slavery, forgery, theft, acts of terrorism, and anything outside the law, as if they were an evil person who posed as a good person in order to do wrong things to distort that person's hearing, and this really means what happened. In his house, or in a shop, cafe, restaurant, or garbage container, he says that it has become his headquarters. 4. A homosexual and adult organization. Of course, the laws of their affiliation are not dirtier than them, meaning the person finds himself signed with them as soon as he talks with them, eats or drinks, or takes something or money, or lives with them without his knowledge of them, so they do not tell him who they are honestly or lie to him with fake qualities, just as I told you that they are an organization affiliated with the United Nations, an international organization, a party organization, a human rights organization, or a tribe, etc. Among the tricks also they have another unclean way, which is directing questions to him. For example, where do you live, or what is your academic achievement, or when you go to this place or that, or are you married, or what is your age, with regard to the victims of choice. Their position is very difficult to escape because the gang made their families, the people who know them, and every shop they buy from, a cafe or a restaurant, etc. It is supposed to be a special affair for him so that they play with it and make it with them. They are like a cow that brings fodder and puts it near and an hour remains to talk to her and says, "Do not eat this. Once you go from it, you will eat this herb." These are exactly the same thing. They do not benefit with anything and they only work according to their wrong laws, but they think that it gives them legitimacy or no one holds them accountable, but it happens. The blame is all on the victim, only that it is something like a person going to the zoo and after this he enters the crocodile cage, and when he gets hurt, the blame is thrown on him. He is only here. This gang the same thing. They make the victim look like she is always the palace and she is the one who came to them. 6. Or working for them or belonging to them, and this is the reason why they are not held accountable. So the mistake is to leave this gang like this, and they are like a herd of hyenas. They were made among the people. Actually, victims bear the responsibility if they knew about them and they had options and they did not take them, meaning if they knew that they are into the Bible church and did not leave it, then they bear the responsibility. But if the gang committed tricks and made the victims home or the victims' families, such as the church or organization, the victim is a poor person who has no money to leave, or they surrounded the victim financially so that they stole money from her and made everyone they know members of their own, so that they prevented them from giving any kind of assistance. They also exploited their influence in state departments in order to fail any attempt the victim also makes. This gang is not an organization at all, but a gang in every sense of the word. All of its laws are gang laws and it does evil only, and the biggest mistake is treating it as an organizer. It is, as I said, the one who destroyed the real non-governmental organizations that were trained by international organizations in Iraq, and they are the ones who work with correct laws and correct goals, and this fatal mistake in Iraq has made a terrorist organization that controls Iraq. Of course, what do you expect from an organization in which the theft is one of the most important conditions for membership, and if he does not steal, his membership will not be accepted and he will not become a leading person for them, meaning he must steal and lie. Notice this then, what good comes from it and how can trust them. Unfortunately this gang was able to deceive. 7. Everyone has made themselves an international organization or affiliated with the United Nations or others and started playing against everyone. They infiltrated state and non-state institutions and security apparatus, and they use this argument as well. Types of evil and also weapons for mind control. Of course, this gang is led by an intelligence officer from the days of the previous regime, and this cursed one made himself a prophet and pretended to be a neutral person among us, who was the devil himself, eliminating them when they made a subordinate group claiming to be with the coalition countries or representing them. Thus many friends of these countries fell into the trap and were either killed or converted and became enemies of these countries, and this is a despicable method that the previous regime also used in the past when it invented the pluralist political trick in Iraq, which was just his deception, was able to eliminate many of those who were against him because they believed this, while these parties were all of them were commanded by intelligence officers affiliated with the same regime and have also been replicated by this terrorist intelligence network and have also succeeded, unfortunately, due to the lack of any military experience among the coalition friends in Iraq, for they are only simple people who consider America and the coalition countries to be his brother to Iraq.
He's trying to leave. We are hearing of several injuries, which when you look at this scene of devastation inside the departure hall, Alex, you'll be surprised that there wasn't many more.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't have any information on the number of injuries. Really, the information that I'm operating on is only really what I'm seeing. Anybody I speak to in authority